I'd ignore how defeated he looked or all the bruises and injuries. 7 Crushing Confessions of Reddit. I'm glad my parents are getting a divorce. I'm a 15-year-old girl. My parents are constantly fighting and at each other's throats. I'm not close to either of them, and have no idea how they can even breathe in such a horrible relationship. Yesterday they told me and my brother, 13, that they're getting a divorce. My brother was really sad about it and actually cried. I couldn't be happier. Finally, I won't have to listen to their bitching for hours and hours. Take this from a soon-to-be child of divorce: don't stay together just for your kids. It doesn't do any good. If you hate your spouse, just get a divorce and try to treat each other like human beings. For now, I'm just glad that I can look forward to some peace. Somebody replied, I remember Louis Creek opened one of his specials talking about just finalizing his divorce. The crowd went www, and he replied, shut up. Divorce is always a good thing. 0 good marriages end in divorce. Only the bad ones do. My parents stayed together for me until I was done with high school, and it was the worst thing they could have done. Everyone was miserable. It might suck for a while until you find your new normal, but in the end it will have been for the best for them, you, and your brother. I wish I had more boyfriends before I settled down. I had my first child at 18, and I've been with the same guy since. I'm in my mid-40s. We have 3 grown kids. I still think about how making out or having relations with people other than my significant other would be like. I miss the feel of a racing heart, the anticipation, tingling feelings, the butterflies in the stomach. I love my partner. To be honest, I only said yes because my insecurities got the best of me and I thought no other guys would be as interested. My love for him grew over time. I'm afraid to lose him. And yes, part of it is due to safety and convenience. I have major insecurity issues, especially with my looks. When someone looks my way, especially the good-looking ones or from a different race, I never believed it. I get intimidated, thinking these guys are too good to be true. I still try to be intimate with my husband, but I miss the spark. At this point, those passionate moments of love feel more like a chore. I'm ashamed to admit that cheating did cross my mind. I will not go through with it. Physically, at least. I'm already messed up mentally and emotionally. Sorry, I'm pretty much all over the place. I'm hoping that posting here would be cathartic and will help me alleviate these thoughts. Thanks for listening. Somebody replied, I understand the desire, but do be aware that that spark will ultimately be unfulfilling compared to what you have now. You're effectively set for life. That's something I wish I could have had and don't. Think about the comfort you have in knowing you don't have to put yourself out there anymore, that you can rest assured in your future. Don't give that up for a spark. It'll be the biggest regret you ever have. Somebody replied, just because it would be your biggest regret, because her life is something you want. That doesn't mean it is something she wants. This can really go both ways. She could regret both choices for the rest of her life. I do adult work to pay for my dad's medical bills and rent. So, a little bit of backstory. I was raised solely by my dad. He's a good man, a lot older than most other dads growing up, but always has been my best friend. I don't think we've ever even gotten into one fight. It was all well and fine, until I was 15, when he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease, AD. It wasn't as bad as it sounds at first. Sure, my dad would forget things every now and then, but slowly, it crept up, to the point where he struggled to remember my name. He has always remembered I'm his son. But things like my interests, name, birthday, times etc., were a struggle for him. Because I was a minor, and my dad was considered terminally ill, according to my state law, we had to have 3 nurses move in with us. All 3 were lovely. They would alternate the times and days they stayed with us, always one nurse living with us while I completed high school. I turned 18, and was finally considered by law an adult. Free home nurse service was discontinued, and not ready to look after my dad alone at 18, continued the service, using my dad's savings, my inheritance and his pensioner money to pay for the service. This lasted 3 years, with a nurse staying around 3 nights per week, instead of 7, as A, I felt I could handle most nights alone, and B, I was in charge of all this money that I knew would dry up, so I tried to make this process as slow as possible. Well, the money inevitably dried up. I was working a shitty part-time job, barely eating healthy myself, doing my undergrad at college, more fees, depressed and going broke fast. I didn't really know what to do, where to turn to. I had almost zero support from the government, health organizations, social workers, college. Nothing. Then, out of the blue, a guy on a dating app messaged me and offered me $100. He was mid-40s, overweight, and ugly. But I was desperate for some quick cash, and that's when it all started. So, from age 22, I've been doing adult work to pay for my dad's nurses, specialist appointments, medication, rent and food, as well as my own life expenses. I'm now 26. At first, I worked just through dating apps. I used my boyish appearance to my advantage and would message older men, asking for help. It was surprisingly easy. I would meet up with older men, ranging from $100 to $250, a few times a week just to stay afloat. After a while, I looked for other avenues. I signed to an agency, and started taking male and female clients out for dinners, casinos, shows, events etc., making a lot more money. I found this easy. I basically grew up at 15. By 18 I had more life experience than most 25-year-olds. The conversations came naturally, and not to boast but being charming has always been my most sincere attribute. I then made my own profile on a website, making $1,500 to $2,500 for overnight calls. $1,500 pays for almost 4 nights for a private overnight nurse. Before COVID I was flying across Europe for weekend work, high-rolling with lots of rich men. Those weekends were bizarre. I don't think I could ever get used to that. But it certainly helped my bank account. In terms of income, I have bad months, good months, and great months. Ever since I've done overnight work, I've always been ahead on payments. I average around $7,500 a month, more than enough to pay for an overnight nurse twice a week, plus rent, bills and medical expenses. It also helps pay for my schooling, food, expenses etc. I even have savings now. On the nights I have a night nurse, I go to work, making a lot more than they do. It's a struggle, and it's tiresome and hard, but the cards were stacked against me and I did what I had to. I suppose I could have made smarter and safer decisions, but I don't regret it. I don't hate this work, but I don't particularly enjoy it either. I think a lot of people think this work is just showing up, when it's indeed business calls, management, independent work. Not to mention, especially being a guy, having to work out, maintaining myself to meet the perfect male gaze. It's gotten in the way with a lot of things. For the past 10 years, I feel like I haven't really lived. Everything I do is for my dad. I barely have any friends. I drank far too much alcohol to mask my pain. I took a month off and detoxed. I was well due for a break, and the one boyfriend I've had dumped me once I told him the truth. But except for him, my psychologist, and now you reading this, no one else knows. Perhaps the nurses suspect something, but I think they presume my dad must have had endless cash, or I get government support, but nope. It's all me, various sugar daddies and older men. My dad doesn't ask simply because he doesn't remember I've gone, or if he does, quickly forgets. He remembers the teenage me, not the young adult me. I worry about my future, I worry about my dad, but the nurses have countlessly told me, he's doing great, and keeping him at his actual home, in his own surroundings instead of in aging in and care home has slowed down his Alzheimer's drastically, and for that, it's worth it. For my dad to remember my name 7/10 times, it's worth it. The biggest takeaway here is the public healthcare system is abominable, and serious measures need to be put in place to fix it. I'm currently taking a break from my master's, but I'm majoring in policy, and I hope to help reform it one day. I shit my pants on Memorial Day. I'm not joking, and I'm only telling Reddit because I need to tell someone and I can't fathom telling someone I know IRL. I am a healthy, 19-year-old guy. I work labor, and have no health conditions. I have a healthy, strong body. Which makes this all the worse. I had a party at my place, and it was awesome. Good friends and food. Unfortunately, I had too much to drink, by a lot. I know my friends left around 5 AM, and that I went to bed shortly after. I woke up at exactly 2:32 PM, and the moment my eyes opened, I know something bad was going to happen. I awoke to the most intense pain I've ever felt in my whole abdominal area. It's what I imagine being stabbed feels like. I've been hit with a taser, and it felt similar but so much worse. My body relayed to my brain that I had about 6 seconds before a travesty occurred. I hopped out of bed, honestly more flu, and made a break for the bathroom. However, abrupt, hurried movements while on shit DEFCON1 is a bad idea. I was wearing loose gym shorts and nothing else, no underwear. What happened next was a war crime. The sheer volume was staggering. It coated the entire backside of my legs. It was on the walls from the splatter, it was everywhere. The floodgates had opened, and the swamps of Darjo Bar had relocated to my pants and immediate surroundings. The colon crockpot had emptied. I stood there with a 404 error in my brain for a solid 3 minutes while I went through the 5 stages of grief, and I tried to formulate an action plan. By now, the stench had hit me. I'm sure had it not been my home brew, it would have killed me at 10 paces. As it were, my eyes were watering. A little piece of my soul died then and there. I found out my best friend, and her baby daddy have been prank calling me for months. I was so kind and caring to this girl, I spent so much money taking her out to cheer her up and on nights out because I know she doesn't have as much at her disposal as I. To clarify, we are both females and I've known her for over 10 years. Figured out she and her baby daddy have been prank calling me for about 2 months, with the first few calls containing explicit and menacing behavior like revealing they know my address and more personal aspects about my life. I know it is her and my boyfriend does too after I put a call on speaker and he picked up one of the voices, mentioned the call the next day to her, and the way she reacted solidified that she was one of the people calling. She doesn't know I have figured out it is her. These are 2 messed up people. They live in poverty and have mental and drug issues. My ex-friend is the type that tries hard to be edgy and get inside people's heads. I really wanna go and wreak havoc, I wanna go hit her. Anyways, I'm angry and hurt. I enjoy pulling reverse cards on American tourists. I work as a bartender in Paris. Sometimes, American tourists will come into the bar, and will try their very best to order from me in a half-broken French. Which is fine really. I do enjoy it when people make the effort to try something like this, which must be way out their comfort zone, and I do everything I can to help them go through with their order and will cheer them on until they get it right. But sometimes, I get the American tourists that feel like English is the only language that exists and no other place besides the USA is civilized. These people will then proceed to speak to me in a very broken, slow English as if I was a caveman of sort. When this does happen, I'll just look at them while they just wave and struggle, dissing me on the spot as if I can't understand anything. Once they're over, I then answer in a perfectly intelligible, but slow English, mimicking them, and watch them realize they've just made a fat mistake assuming they should talk to me like I'm a fucking idiot. I helped my little brother cover up his boyfriend's murder. This was in the early 80s when I was still a deputy in the small town I grew up in. My little brother Martin, who was 16 then, was in a secret relationship with one of his friends, this other boy Paul, also 16, that only I knew about. The thing was, Paul put a huge amount of mental strain on Martin, which I didn't take seriously back then. I just thought of as boys being boys, and I would just tell my brother, "You're both guys, just hit back." I'd ignore how defeated he looked or all the bruises and injuries, honestly somehow thinking he might have deserved for whatever reason. That is until I got a call from him in the middle of the night, scared and crying one night. I just remember he was babbling on the phone and he needed my help, so I went out to where he said he was and found Martin beaten up bad with blood all over him and Paul halfway in the creek not moving, apparently from a wound in his thigh. Martin told me that Paul's dad had found some playgirls in his room and threw him out, and Paul tried to get Martin to run away with him and my brother refused. Paul got mad and attacked my brother, and my brother found a shard of glass on the ground and stabbed Paul while he was hitting him. Paul ran off towards the creek and yanked the glass out and bled out quick. 100 things were running through my mind. I remember thinking it was lucky that he mostly bled out in the water. I took my brother and forced him to help me carry Paul out deep in the woods, and we dug and dug all night and buried him out there as deep as we could get, and then I cleaned up the scene as much as I could and burned our clothes from that night. The police investigated a bit, but I alibied Martin as being over at my place that night, and once the department got wind of what happened between Paul and his dad, they just deemed him a runaway trying to get away from his dad. Thank you for watching. Some of these stories were more dark than others. In future videos I am going to focus on the more troubling confessions, so subscribe for more raw truths.